The corridor had no name that mattered. Charts called it Sector K-19, a neutral stretch between two minor trade systems, but pilots who actually flew it had other names. None of them were said out loud on official channels. Names like that tended to carry weight. Out here, space didn't feel empty. It felt unattended. Not abandoned. Not forgotten. Just left alone long enough that anything could happen without being noticed. Captain Elian Voss kept his ship moving at a steady cruise, not fast enough to stress the drives, not slow enough to linger. The kind of speed you chose when you wanted to pass through something, not experience it. His sensors were wide open. They had been for the last 3 hours. Nothing. No traffic pings. No debris clusters worth logging. No radiation spikes. Just the low, constant hum of background static, the kind that filled silence without actually breaking it. He didn't like it. Not because it was dangerous. Because it wasn't. Danger, you could prepare for. Silence like this meant you didn't know what to prepare for. Time to exit? His first officer asked from the secondary console. 41 minutes, Elian replied without looking up. He didn't need to check. He'd run this corridor enough times to feel distance the way some people felt weather. 41 minutes and they'd be back in monitored space, back where signals overlapped and someone was always watching something. 41 minutes and the tension in his shoulders would ease without him noticing it happen. He adjusted the sensor gain slightly. Still nothing. But nothing was good. Nothing meant clean passage. Clean passage meant profit. Profit meant the job was done and he could stop thinking about it. He leaned back in the pilot's chair, just enough to take the edge off the posture he didn't realize he was holding. That was when the sensor board flickered. Not a full alert. Just a hesitation. Like the system itself wasn't sure it had seen something. Elian's hand moved before the thought finished forming. "Hold that," he said. The first officer froze the scan. For a moment, there was nothing. A return signal. Inconsistent. Not moving. Elian leaned forward slowly. Zoom. The display tightened. There was a ship. Drifting. No active propulsion signature. No running lights. No standard broadcast. Just a faint, steady ping. Emergency locator. Automatic. Meaning whatever had happened, had already happened. How far? He asked. 800 kilometers off port, the first officer said. Vector stable. No drift correction. Dead in space. Elian stared at the reading. This corridor didn't have traffic. Not regular traffic. And ships didn't just stop out here. Not unless something had gone wrong in a very specific way. Could be debris spoof, the officer added carefully. Old war tech sometimes. No, Elian said quietly. The signal was too clean for that. Too deliberate. He watched it for another few seconds. Nothing changed. No movement. No escalation. No distress call layered over the beacon. Just that steady, patient pulse. Waiting. He exhaled slowly. There were rules for places like this. Unwritten, but understood. You didn't stop. You didn't investigate. You didn't become part of whatever story had already ended here. He knew those rules. He had followed them for years. His hand moved to the throttle. The ship continued forward, steady, obedient. 800 kilometers. 41 minutes to safety. No obligation. No witness. No consequence. The beacon pulsed again. Steady. Unhurried. As if it had all the time in the world. Elian Voss changed course. Not sharply. Not dramatically. Just enough that the ship began, almost politely, to drift toward the signal. His first officer didn't say anything. Didn't need to. The kind of decision that didn't require discussion usually wasn't one you could explain anyway. The distance began to close. 700 kilometers. 6. The shape of the ship resolved slowly against the dark. Old model. Freighter class. Hull plating mismatched in color and texture, like repairs had been done wherever and however they could be. One section near the aft looked scorched. Another panel sat slightly out of alignment, as if it had been sealed in a hurry and never properly corrected. It wasn't wreckage. It was worse than that. It was a ship that had survived too many things. Atmosphere leak, the officer said quietly, reading the scan. Elian saw it too. A thin, almost invisible stream venting into space from a fracture along the secondary hull. Not catastrophic. Not yet. Just time running out, slowly and without urgency. He guided the ship closer. 500 kilometers. Still no distress call. No movement inside. No sign of panic. Just that same steady locator ping. Waiting. 300 kilometers. The docking ports came into view. One of them was partially sealed. Badly. Functional but barely. Elian's jaw tightened slightly. Ships didn't sit like this unless something had gone wrong. Or someone had decided not to leave. Life signs? He asked. The scan took a second longer than it should have. 1. Elian didn't respond immediately. 1, he repeated. Single life signature. Stable. Stable. Not fading. Not critical. Stable. That didn't make sense. A venting ship. No broadcast. No movement. And someone inside, just alive. Waiting. Elian eased his ship into docking position. Carefully. Deliberately. Like approaching something that might not react the way it was supposed to. The hull of the freighter loomed closer. Scarred. Stubborn. The kind of ship that kept flying because someone refused to let it stop. The clamps locked with a muted, final sound. Connection established. For a moment, neither of them moved. The corridor outside remained silent. Unchanged. Uninterested. Elian stood. Let's see what we just decided to involve ourselves in, he said. The airlock cycled with a slow, deliberate hiss. Elian stepped through first. Not rushed. Not cautious in an obvious way. Just controlled. The kind of movement that assumed something might go wrong, but refused to give it the satisfaction of showing. His first officer followed. 2 crew behind. Weapons stayed holstered. Not out of trust. Out of discipline. The interior of the freighter was dim, but not dark. Emergency lighting, low, steady strips along the walls, cast long shadows across a corridor that had seen too much use and not enough maintenance. The air felt thin. Not dangerously so. Just stretched. Like it had been reused too many times. Elian's boots echoed softly against the metal floor. No movement. No voices. No alarms. Only the faint hum of a failing system trying its best to continue doing its job. He glanced at the wall panel nearest the airlock. Manual overrides. Recent use. Someone was still maintaining things. That mattered. Life signs forward, the officer said quietly. Elian nodded. They moved. Step by step. The ship wasn't large. Old freighters rarely were built for function, not comfort. The kind of vessel that existed to move cargo, not people. So it felt lived in. Tools secured properly. Panels closed where they should be. No signs of panic or damage inside beyond what the hull had already shown. Whoever was here hadn't lost control. That mattered more. They reached the cockpit. The door was open. Not forced. Not damaged. Just open. Elian stopped just outside the threshold. Looked in. And for a brief moment, nothing made sense. There was no chaos. No injured pilot slumped over controls. No frantic attempt to fix something that couldn't be fixed. There was just a person, sitting in the pilot's chair, reading. She had one boot propped lightly against the console, like someone passing time during a long delay rather than sitting in a dying ship in the middle of empty space. An EVA suit hung loosely over her frame, scuffed and patched in places that suggested long-term use, not recent damage. The helmet rested beside her. Within reach. Not worn. Not needed yet. A small handheld device sat in her hands, cracked in one corner, repaired with a strip of tape that had been applied carefully, not carelessly. She turned the page. Then, without any visible startle or urgency, she looked up. Her eyes moved across the 4 of them. Quick, efficient, assessing. Not fearful. Not relieved. Just noting. And then they settled on Elian. The way eyes settle on the person in charge without needing to be told who that is. Captain, she said. Her voice was calm. Not forced calm. Not someone trying to hide panic. Just calm. Thank you for stopping. Elian didn't answer immediately. He had boarded ships before. Derelicts. Accidents. Situations that had gone bad in ways that left marks, physical or otherwise. This wasn't any of those. This was something else. "You're venting atmosphere," he said finally. A statement, not a question. "I know," she replied. She tilted her head slightly toward the console. "Secondary hull fracture. Slow leak. I patched it externally, but the seal's temporary. It'll hold a few more hours." Her tone suggested she was discussing a minor inconvenience. "Like weather." Elian stepped into the cockpit. Slowly. "You didn't broadcast a distress signal." "No." "Why?" She set the handheld device down on the console. Face up. Carefully. Like she intended to come back to it. "I didn't need one," she said. Elian's expression didn't change. "You're alone. In a failing ship. In a dead corridor." "Yes." "And you didn't think that qualified as distress?" She considered that for a moment. Not defensively. Actually considering it. "It qualifies," she said. "It just didn't require broadcasting." Elian studied her. Most people in this situation would be panicking, bargaining, explaining too much. She was doing none of that. She was waiting. Not passively. Not helplessly. Just waiting. Like the outcome had already been accounted for. "What did you expect to happen?" he asked. She met his gaze evenly. "Someone would come through eventually." "And if they didn't?" She shrugged lightly. "Then I would have run out of time." No drama. No wait. Just a statement of fact. Something in Elian's chest shifted slightly. Not discomfort. Recognition. "You're not concerned about that possibility?" he asked. "I accounted for it," she said. That wasn't the same thing. Elian noticed. His first officer shifted slightly behind him. Uncomfortable. Understandably. This conversation wasn't following any of the patterns it should have. Elian stepped closer to the console. Checked the readings himself. Everything she'd said was accurate. Patch holding. Barely. Time window limited. Also accurate. He looked back at her. "What do you need?" There was the question that usually triggered desperation, negotiation, relief. She did none of those. Instead, she answered immediately. "I need 40 liters of thruster fuel," she said, "and approximately 6 hours of your cruise time." Elian blinked once. That was specific. "I can pay half in minerals," she continued, "and the other half in something more useful." That caught his attention. "More useful than minerals?" he asked. "Yes." She gestured slightly toward his ship, not visible from here, but she didn't need to see it. "You've been running this corridor for a long time," she said. Not a question. A statement. Elian's eyes narrowed slightly. "Go on." "Your port thruster casings show uneven wear," she said. "Long-term exposure to outdated drift corrections." The pause. "You're using old lane charts." Silence. His first officer looked at him. Elian didn't look away from her. "Those charts are outdated by about 8 months," she continued. Her tone didn't change. No pride. No challenge. Just information. "I've been running updated routes for the last 6, she said. "They're faster. Safer. Less fuel-intensive." Elian felt something click into place. Not surprise. Understanding. This wasn't a stranded pilot. This was someone who had already evaluated the situation, calculated the odds, prepared the outcome, and was now executing the plan. "You mapped them yourself?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" She held his gaze. "Because they weren't there." Simple. Complete. No further explanation needed. Elian exhaled slowly. There was the answer to the question he hadn't asked yet. What kind of person sits in a dying ship and reads? The kind who knows exactly what they're doing. He looked at her for a long moment. "But you're very certain someone would stop?" "Yes." "Why?" She tilted her head slightly. Not amused. Not condescending. Just answering. "Because most captains who fly this corridor keep their sensors open," she said. A small pause. "And because someone like you would notice the difference." Elian didn't move. Didn't react outwardly. But something in that sentence landed exactly where it was meant to. Not flattery. Recognition. Accurate. He nodded once. Decision made. You'll get the fuel, he said. And the time. She inclined her head slightly. Acknowledgement. Not relief. Thank you, she said. Same calm tone. Like the outcome had been expected. Elian turned to his crew. Begin transfer. Full repair on the hull fracture. They moved immediately. Grateful, in a quiet way, to have something normal to do. Something procedural. Something that made sense. Elian stayed where he was. Watching her. She picked up the handheld device again. Resumed reading. Exactly where she left off. Like nothing significant had just happened. Like this was simply the next step in a process she had already finished thinking through. Elian leaned slightly against the console. What's your name? He asked. She didn't look up this time. Rinfo, she said. A small pause. Rincalis. The transfer began immediately. Fuel lines extended from Elian's ship, locking into the freighter's intake ports with a mechanical precision that felt reassuring in contrast to everything else about the situation. Outside, the whole team moved across the fracture point, anchoring themselves with practiced ease. Magnetic clamps clicked into place. Tools engaged. Work began. Inside, the cockpit remained quiet. Rin read. Not pretending to read. Not distracting herself. Actually reading. Elian watched her for a moment longer before turning his attention back to the console. Your patch, he said. It was clean. She turned a page. It was temporary. That's not what I said. A small pause. Then she looked up again. You're right, she said. It was clean. No deflection. No modesty. Just accuracy. Elian allowed himself the faintest hint of a smile. That confirmed it. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She just operated that way. Walk me through it, he said. She shifted slightly in the chair, not sitting straighter, just adjusting into a position that suggested she was now engaged. The fracture started along the secondary seam, she said. Probably from thermal stress over time. The hull plating's been replaced at least 3 times. Elian glanced at the scan data. The checked out. You anchored externally, he said. Yes. Why not seal from inside? She gave him a look, not impatient, but precise. Internal pressure pushes outward, she said. If I sealed from inside, the patch would fail faster. Elian nodded once. Correct. Obvious in hindsight. Not obvious under pressure. You've done this before, he said. Yes. How many times? She considered it. Enough that I stopped counting. That answer told him more than a number would have. Outside, sparks flickered briefly across the viewport as the crew reinforced the fracture. Elian crossed his arms. You asked for 6 hours, he said. Yes. My crew will finish in 4. She nodded. I expected that. You did? Yes. Why? She gestured slightly toward the hull. Your team is efficient. Your ship's maintenance logs are clean. You don't cut corners on structural work. Elian didn't ask how she knew that. He already had a guess. Observation. Pattern recognition. The same way she'd read his thruster wear. You built your offer around that assumption, he said. Yes. And if we weren't that efficient? She shrugged lightly. Then I would have adjusted. Of course. No wasted planning. No rigid expectations. Everything flexible. Elian exhaled slowly. You're very confident for someone in your position. That got a reaction. Not defensive. Just clarification. I'm not confident, she said. I'm prepared. That was different. Important. Elian filed it away. Let's talk about your more useful payment, he said. She nodded. Set the reader down again. This time fully. Work mode. The Drexel shipping lanes shifted 8 months ago, she said. Gravitational drift from a cluster collapse in Sector J4. Elian frowned slightly. That wasn't published. No. Why? Because the Commercial Guild is still negotiating exclusive access to the updated routes. That made sense. Too much sense. Meaning. She was right. He'd been running inefficient paths for months. Losing time. Losing fuel. Losing money. How far off? He asked. On your current routes? She said. A brief pause. 40 to 45 minutes per run. Silence. His first officer looked up sharply from the console. That wasn't minor. That was massive. Cross multiple runs. That was the difference between profit and loss. You're certain? Elian asked. Yes. No hesitation. No qualifiers. Just yes. Show me. She reached for the navigation panel. Didn't ask permission. Didn't hesitate. Just moved. Her fingers worked across the interface with quiet familiarity, pulling up star maps, overlaying data, adjusting vectors. Not fast in a flashy way. Fast in a precise way. Like someone who had done this enough times that speed wasn't the goal. Accuracy was. Here, she said. The screen shifted. New routes appeared. Cleaner. More direct. Avoiding areas his current charts flagged as unstable. Because they used to be. Not anymore. You've been compensating for drift that doesn't exist, she said. And missing new microcurrents that do. Elian leaned in. Studied the data. Ran the calculations in his head. Fin. The numbers held. His jaw tightened slightly. Not in anger. In realization. How long have you had this? He asked. 6 months. And you didn't sell it? She looked at him. Actually looked. I do sell it, she said. A small pause. Just not always for credits. That landed. Harder than expected. Elian straightened slowly. You're trading this for fuel and 6 hours of labor? Yes. That's not an equal trade. I know. Then why offer it? She tilted her head slightly. Because the answer was obvious. To get what I need now, she said. Practical. Immediate. No attachment to maximizing profit. Just solving the current problem. Elian studied her again. There was no angle here. No manipulation. No hidden leverage. Accurate assessment. Fair exchange. Correct timing. You could have charged 10 times that, he said. Yes. And you didn't. No. Why? She considered the question. Not because it was difficult. Because she was deciding how much of the answer mattered. Because you stopped, she said. Simple. Direct. That was it. No speech. No philosophy. Just that. Elian felt something shift again. Subtle. But real. Outside, the whole team signaled completion. For hours. Exactly. He glanced at the time. Then back at her. You said you mapped this yourself, he said. Yes. Why? She didn't answer immediately this time. She looked at the star map. At the empty stretches between routes. At the places most ships didn't go. Because no one else had, she said. The same answer. For now. He understood it better. This wasn't ambition. Or curiosity. Or profit. So something else. Elian nodded once. Decision finalized. Transfer the data, he said. She did. No ceremony. No conditions. Just a clean data packet sent directly to his system. He verified it. Ran it again. Still held. Still perfect. More than worth what he'd given. More than fair. He extended his hand. She looked at it. Then took it. Her grip was firm. Not aggressive. Not hesitant. Just precise. Safe travel, she said. And you, he replied. A small pause. Then he added. You'll make it out of here. She released his hand. Picked up her reader again. I know, she said. Like she always had. Elian didn't think about her again. Not immediately. That was the nature of work like his. You moved. You delivered. You calculated margins, fuel costs, timing windows. You kept the ship running. You kept the crew paid. And the rest of it, the strange moments, the unusual encounters, they passed through you the way everything else did. Just filed somewhere you didn't look often. He disengaged from the freighter without ceremony. No lingering. No final exchange. The clamps released with a soft mechanical thud. His ship pulled away, steady and controlled. Behind him, the patched freighter remained where it was. Still, Waiting. But not for him anymore. The corridor didn't change. It never did. Still silent. Still empty. Still that same unsettling absence of attention. But something about it felt different. Not safer. Not more dangerous. Resolved. Elian didn't dwell on that feeling. He had a schedule. He had cargo. And now, he had new charts. He loaded them 20 minutes after clearing the freighter. Didn't wait until he reached safe space. Didn't delay. Something about the precision of her data made hesitation feel unnecessary. The navigation system recalibrated. Routes shifted. Vectors adjusted. Old warning zones disappeared. New ones appeared. Cleaner. Tighter. More efficient. Elian watched the system process the changes. His first officer leaned slightly closer to the display. Running simulation? The officer asked. Already am, Elian said. The numbers updated. Time reduction, 41 minutes. Fuel efficiency, plus 3.2%. Hazard avoidance, improved. The officer let out a quiet breath. That's not minor, he said. No, Elian replied. It wasn't. It was the kind of improvement that didn't just increase profit. It changed how you operated. Every run. Every route. Every decision built on it. Elian stared at the data a moment longer. Then he closed the panel. Log it, he said. The officer nodded. Work resumed. 2 days later, he was still using the new routes. Still shaving time. Still watching the numbers align exactly the way they should. The kind of clean efficiency that made a pilot trust something without needing to question it. That was rare. Rare enough that it stayed in your mind. Just a little longer than usual. He found himself thinking about her once. Only once. Standing alone on the bridge during a quiet shift rotation. Looking at the corridor now behind him. Trying to remember exactly what had felt unusual. Not the situation. Not the damaged ship. Those were normal enough in their own way. It was her. The calm. The certainty. The way she had sat there. Reading. As if the outcome had already been decided. As if she had already solved the problem and was simply waiting for the steps to catch up. He exhaled slowly. Then shook his head slightly. People like that existed. Rare. But not impossible. You met them sometimes in the lanes. People who understood things faster. Saw patterns clearer. Operated with a kind of quiet efficiency that made everything around them feel slightly slower. You noticed them. Then you moved on. Because that's what the work required. The galaxy didn't pause for reflection. It didn't care about moments. It cared about movement. And Elian Voss had always been good at moving forward. By the third day, he stopped thinking about her entirely. Not intentionally. Just naturally. The way memory works when something hasn't asked to be remembered. But something remained. Not a thought. Not even a memory. A small adjustment. A recalibration. Subtle. Almost invisible. The next time his sensors flickered unexpectedly, he noticed faster. The next time something didn't quite fit the pattern, he paid closer attention. Not because of her. Not consciously. Just because something in his process had shifted. And he never realized that the most valuable thing she had given him wasn't the charts. It was that. The corridor disappeared behind him. The stars thickened. Signals returned. Traffic lanes filled with movement and noise and the familiar structure of monitored space. The kind of place where everything had a place. A system. A pattern. But somewhere, far behind him, in a stretch of space that didn't belong to anyone, a patched freighter adjusted its course. A hull repair held. A small ship moved forward again. And the galaxy continued. Unchanged. Except, it wasn't. Port Helix 9 was loud in a way that had nothing to do with sound. It was busy, yes. Cargo loaders moving in tight, efficient patterns, ships cycling in and out of docking lanes, trade calls bouncing across open channels. But the noise wasn't what defined it. Not forgotten.it was pressure. The kind that built slowly in places where everyone was trying to gain something before someone else took it first. Captain Sarah Vale stood on the upper deck of Bay 14, watching her crew unload the third shipment of the day. 3 ships. Tight margins. No wasted motion. Everything accounted for. That was how she ran things. Had to. Ports like Helix didn't forgive inefficiency. They didn't forgive kindness either. Not the kind that cost you. Sarah had learned that early. Learned it well enough that it had stopped being a lesson and become instinct. Below her, a loader unit stalled briefly, then corrected. She made a mental note. Maintenance check later. Nothing slipped. Nothing got ignored. That was how you stayed ahead. She turned toward the stairwell. Someone was sitting on the steps. Not blocking the path. Not asking for attention. A small kit bag at her feet. Hands resting loosely on her knees. Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly. Not fear. Assessment. Ports had people like this. Drifters. Out-of-work crew. Desperate types. Some harmless. Some not. This one didn't look desperate. That was the first thing. Clothes worn but maintained. Tools clipped to her belt. Good tools. Not cheap. Which meant she'd had money. She knew how to use them. Her posture was relaxed. Not slouched. Not tense. Just balanced. Like someone waiting for a decision they'd already accepted either way. Sarah stepped closer. "You're sitting outside my bay," she said. Not aggressive. Just factual. The woman looked up. Eyes moved over Sarah quickly. Measured. Same way Sarah had just measured her. "I know," she said. Her voice was calm. Not forced. Not careful. Just calm. "I'm looking for short-term work," she added. Sarah crossed her arms. "What kind?" "Hull maintenance. Cargo handling. Navigation calibration. General crew support." No hesitation. No searching for the right answer. Just listing. 3 days, the woman continued. "I'll work for a bunk and 1 meal a day. No credits." That was unusual. Sarah studied her more carefully now. No signs of withdrawal. No instability. No edge of desperation. Just clarity. "You don't want credits," Sarah said. "I don't need them right now." That wasn't the same thing. Sarah noticed. "What do you need?" she asked. "A place to work for 3 days," the woman said. Simple. Direct. No story attached. No explanation offered. Sarah glanced at the kit bag. Then back at her. "What's your name?" "Ren." That was enough. Not trust. But interest. Sarah made decisions quickly. Always had. Hesitation cost more than mistakes in this line of work. 3 days, she said. "Bay work first. Then we'll see." Ren nodded once. Fair. No gratitude. No relief. Just acceptance. Like the outcome had been one of several expected ones. Sarah turned. "Prell," she called. Her first officer looked up from the cargo manifest. "Assign her to maintenance on Ship 2, Sarah said. Prell frowned slightly. "Short-term hire?" "Yes." He looked at Ren. Then back at Sarah. Didn't argue. Didn't need to. He trusted her judgment. Even when he didn't like it. "Fine," he muttered. "Follow me." Ren stood. Picked up her bag. No wasted motion. Prell didn't like her. That was obvious within the first hour. Not openly. Not confrontational. Distrust. The kind that came from not being able to read someone properly. Sarah found it mildly amusing. Prell trusted systems. Processes. Predictable behavior. Ren didn't fit any of those. She worked. That was the second thing. Not quickly in a flashy way. Not trying to prove anything. Efficient. Accurate. Ship 2's maintenance schedule projected 3 days of work. Ren finished it in 1.5. No shortcuts. No missteps. She didn't announce it. Didn't report it as an achievement. She just moved on to the next task. Sarah noticed. Of course she did. You didn't run 3 ships without noticing efficiency shifts like that. But she didn't comment. Observation first. Boys. On day 2, Ren moved to the cargo manifests. Prell handed her the data slate with a look that suggested this was where she'd slow down. Numbers. Systems. Layered records. Harder to fake competence here. Ren scanned it. Then again. Her brow furrowed slightly. Not confusion. Recognition. What's your drift compensation set at for Ship 3? She asked. Prell looked up. Standard calibration. Which version? He hesitated. 2 revisions back. Ren nodded. There's a misalignment in your secondary navigation system, she said. It's small. About 3% fuel inefficiency. Prell frowned. That's been flagged before, he said. Not critical. It's wrong, Ren said. Not argumentative. Correct. Prell stared at her. Then at the data. Then back. You're sure? Yes. Silence. Fix it, he said. Testing. Ren didn't react to the tone. Didn't acknowledge it. She just turned back to the console. Worked. No hesitation. No rechecking for reassurance. Done. The correction took less than an hour. Prell verified it himself. Ran the numbers. Checked again. The error was gone. Cleanly. Completely. He leaned back slowly. That's been sitting there for 11 months, he said. Ren didn't look up. It's fixed now. That was it. No emphasis. No expectation. No you're welcome. She finished her 3 days. Exactly 3. Didn't ask to stay. Didn't negotiate for more work. Didn't bring up the calibration fix. Didn't mention the efficiency gains. She packed her bag, checked her tools, and went to find Sarah. Sarah was in her office when Ren knocked. Come in, she said. Ren stepped inside. I'm done, she said. Sarah nodded. I know. The pause. You fixed the calibration issue on Ship 3. Ren shrugged slightly. It needed fixing. You didn't mention it. No. Why? Ren looked at her. Like the question itself was slightly misplaced. You gave me work, she said. I did the work. That was not how most people operated. Sarah knew that. Very well. She leaned back in her chair. Studied her. You could have charged for that, she said. Yes. You didn't. No. Why? Ren considered it briefly. Because you didn't ask for it, she said. That answer landed differently. Sarah didn't respond immediately. She understood value. Margins. Exchange. Everything had a cost. Everything had a return. That was how the system worked. But this didn't fit cleanly. Ren shifted her weight slightly. Thank you for the work, she said. Simple. Direct. And then she turned to leave. No lingering. No expectation. Done. Sarah watched her go. For a long moment. Then she looked down at the numbers on her console. 3% fuel efficiency. Across all runs. That wasn't minor. That wasn't small. That was significant. And Ren had walked away from it. Without even mentioning it. Sarah leaned back slowly. Eyes narrowing slightly. Not in suspicion. In calculation. This didn't fit. Didn't align. Didn't make sense in any standard model she understood. And Sarah Vale understood models very well. She opened a new file. Entered one line. Run callous. Worth watching. She didn't know why yet. But she would. 3 systems away. A navigation officer adjusted a route he didn't remember learning. He trusted it anyway. It was cleaner than the standard path. Safer. He couldn't recall where the data had come from. Only that it had worked every time he'd used it. 7 systems inward. A trade negotiator closed a deal she should have lost. The numbers had aligned too perfectly. A variable had shifted in her favor at the exact moment it needed to. She reviewed the file afterward. Found a correction buried deep in the documentation. Precise. Critical. There was no author attached. Only a timestamp. 6 months old. Farther out, a survey crew recovered equipment they thought was gone forever. Lost in a drift zone no one willingly entered. They found it intact. Repaired. Waiting. A small note embedded in the system logs. Secured. Stable. Return route attached. No signature. No claim. Handled. In a council archive station. An analyst paused over a dataset that didn't quite align. She had been tracking anomalies for months. Patterns that weren't visible in isolation. Only when viewed together. 17 cases. Different systems. Different species. Different scales. No shared origin. No shared organization. But the outcomes? Consistent. Each case involved a critical correction, a timely intervention, an untraceable source, and in each, the recipient had, at some point in the past, helped someone. A human. The analyst leaned back slowly, tapped the edge of the display, cross-referenced the identities again. Names shifted. Records incomplete. Aliases used. But one thread remained. A recurring identifier. Fragmented. Incomplete. But present. Callous. She zoomed out. Looked at all 17 points at once. Spread across systems. Across years. Across completely unrelated events. And yet, connected. Not through communication. Not through coordination. But through sequence. She opened a new file. Typed carefully. Pattern. Distributed reciprocity network. She paused. Deleted it. Pattern. Unresolved. Because that was the problem. This wasn't a network. There was no structure. No command. No visible mechanism. Results. Sarah Vale stood in her office, staring at a report she hadn't expected to receive. 42 pages. That's precise. Every argument in her ongoing trade dispute dismantled. Not emotionally. Not rhetorically. Mathematically. Cleanly. Completely. She read it once. Then again. Then a third time. Because it didn't make sense. This level of analysis, this level of detail, would have cost more than the dispute itself to commission. And yet, there was no invoice. No sender. Only a broker signature. Independent. Outer Rim Registry. Inactive for 6 years. Sarah ran the registration. Waited. Results returned. She stared at them. Then checked again. Same answer. She leaned back slowly. Mind working through the pieces. 3 days. The bunk. 3 meals. A calibration fix. Walked away. No request. No follow-up. No contact. And now, Sarah closed the file. Sat in silence. Running a different kind of calculation. Not numbers. People. Memory. Value. She didn't say it out loud. Didn't write it down. But the conclusion formed anyway. Unavoidable. This wasn't random. Cross the systems. Cross the years. Small things had been done. Quietly. Precisely. Without announcement. Without expectation. And now, those things were moving. Not coordinated. Not commanded. Returning. The analyst in the archive station filed her report. Low priority. No immediate threat. No strategic classification. Her supervisor skimmed it. Marked one line in the margin. Human behavioral variance, low significance. Filed. Forgotten. Because they were looking for strategy, power structures, organized influence. They didn't have a category for. Backhand index pointing right, someone who simply pays attention. Out in the outer systems, a small ship moved along an uncharted vector. No broadcast. No escort. No attention drawn. Inside, Rin adjusted a course parameter by less than a degree. Watched the numbers settle. Correct. As expected. She didn't think about the navigation officer. Or the negotiator. Or the survey crew. Or Sarah. Not actively. But somewhere. In the quiet place where things that matter are kept. She remembered. Not as debts. Not as obligations. People. And she continued forward. Time moved. The way it always did in the outer systems. Quietly. Without announcement. Measured not in years but in routes. In cargo runs completed. In ships replaced. In names that stopped appearing on manifests. 22 years passed. The lanes changed. They always did. Trade routes shifted as new resources were discovered. Old systems declined when those resources ran out. Governments rose. Collapsed. Reformed under new names that pretended they had always existed. And through all of it, something small moved with the changes. Never leading. Never announcing itself. Present. Talk to the human. That was how it started. Quiet. Offend. The kind of thing one pilot said to another over a shared channel when the official routes didn't feel right. She runs the outer rim. Not officially. No. The pause. Still, if she says a route's clear, it's clear. No one could ever quite say where they had heard it first, or who had said it, only that it kept coming up. In different systems. In different conversations. Always the same tone. Not hype. Not exaggeration. Confidence. Captain Elian Voss heard it once. Years after the corridor. Standing in a docking bay, watching a younger pilot argue with a navigation officer about a risky route. "You don't have the data," the officer said. "I do," the pilot replied. "It's from..." A hesitation. A human out in the rim. Elian looked up. Didn't interrupt. Didn't ask. Just listened. He didn't need the name. He already knew it. He said nothing. Turned. Walked away. But something in his expression had shifted. Just slightly. Sarah Vale was running 9 ships now. 9. A number she would have laughed at 20 years ago. Too complex. Too unstable. Too many variables to control. And yet, here she was. Running them. Efficiently. Profitably. She didn't talk about the report. Never mentioned it. Never acknowledged where it might have come from. But sometimes, when reviewing her systems, she found herself looking closer. At small discrepancies. At quiet inefficiencies. At things that didn't demand attention, but might matter anyway. She had adjusted her process. Not dramatically. But enough. She still dealt in margins. Still made hard decisions. Still refused charity that cost more than it gave. But she no longer ignored things just because they were small. That was the difference. She didn't know why. Not consciously. But the adjustment remained. And it worked. Farther out, a Drexel freighter captain adjusted his route based on data he trusted without remembering why. A survey team took a risk they normally wouldn't have taken, because someone they trusted had once told them, "Try it. It'll hold." A trade official introduced 2 people who would later build something neither of them could have built alone. Because years ago, someone had introduced him to the right contact at the right time. No one connected these things. Not fully. Not consciously. But they happened. Again. And again. And again. Not large. Not dramatic. Correct. The analyst in the archive station noticed the pattern deepen. More cases. More spread. More time between cause and effect. She updated the file. Added new entries. Refined the connections. So, no structure. No command chain. No traceable system. Consistency. She wrote a new line in her report. Influence persists beyond direct interaction window. Her supervisor read it. Then added a note beneath. No actionable threat identified. Filed. Because they were still looking for strategy, leverage, control. They still didn't have a model for someone who helps without needing to control the outcome. Out on the edge, where the stars thinned and signals faded, Rin continued. Her ship changed. More than once. Better hull. Stronger drives. Cleaner systems. But her process didn't. She ran routes others avoided. Mapped paths others ignored. Fixed things that needed fixing. Said things that needed saying. And she remembered. Not everything. Not perfectly. But enough. Always enough. If someone had helped her, she remembered. If someone had needed something, and she could provide it, she did. No ledger. No tracking system. No list. Pension. And over time, that became something else. Not power. Not influence. Something harder to define. Because it didn't behave like power. Didn't accumulate. Didn't demand. Didn't control. Simply existed. And waited. For the moment it would matter. The announcement came without urgency. That was the first sign it mattered. It wasn't framed as a warning. Or a declaration of conflict. Or even expansion. It was called Territorial Stabilization Directive, Outer Sector Alignment. Clean language. Administrative tone. The kind of phrasing designed to make something irreversible sound routine. 7 outer systems were listed. Sparse. Low population. Minimal infrastructure. One of them had a colony. 43,000 people. Third generation. Born there. Raised there. Buried their dead there. People who didn't think of themselves as living on the edge of anything. Because to them, it wasn't the edge. It was home. The directive gave them 60 days. 60 days to evacuate. To dismantle. To leave behind everything that didn't fit in transport ships. No appeal process. No negotiation window. The Galactic Council issued a statement. Measured. Concerned. Carefully worded. They would review the situation. They would assess implications. They would open dialogue. They would do nothing. Because the force behind the directive did not require permission. The hegemony fleet began mobilization before the announcement finished transmitting. 200 warships. Organized. Disciplined. Precise. They didn't rush. They didn't posture. They moved the way certainty moves. By the time the Council scheduled its first formal discussion, the fleet was already in position. High orbit. Above the colony. Watching. Waiting. Below. Life continued. Because it had to. Markets opened. Children moved through streets. Repair crews worked the outer structures. But the rhythm was wrong. Everyone knew it. No one said it. 43,000 people? And nowhere to go. Ren read the directive twice. Then once more. She didn't react immediately. Didn't speak. Didn't move. She sat in the small cabin of her ship, hands resting lightly on the console. Thinking. Not about the fleet. Not about the Council. About time. 60 days. Too short to relocate properly. Too long to ignore. She stood. Walked to the viewport. Looked out at the colony. Lights scattered across the surface. Ordinary. People inside those lights. Cooking. Talking. Planning tomorrow. As if tomorrow still belonged to them. Rin closed her eyes briefly. Then opened them. Decision made. She didn't go to the Council. Didn't file a petition. Didn't open a channel to the fleet. Because none of those paths led anywhere. Instead, she waited. One day. She moved through the colony quietly. Not announcing anything. Not gathering people. Observing. Mapping what needed to be understood. Supply limits. Transport capacity. Population distribution. She spoke to no one about the larger problem. Only small things. A broken system fixed here. A route corrected there. A conversation that shifted slightly. Just enough. Because that was how she worked. Always had. On the third day, she went to the communication center. Not the main system. Not the official channels. The secondary array. Older. Less regulated. Used mostly for freight signals. Deep lane communication. The kind of system people forgot about. Until they needed it. She sat at the console. Powered it up. The interface flickered once. Then stabilized. She opened a transmission window. Not because she didn't know what to say. Because she was deciding. How much needed to be said. The answer came quickly. Very little. She began typing. Not one message. 26. Each one. Slightly different. Same core. Different tone. Different language. Different form of address. Each one tailored to the person receiving it. Because she remembered them. Not just who they were, but how they listened. She didn't explain the situation. Didn't describe the fleet. Didn't outline the stakes. She didn't need to. Instead, she wrote 3 sentences. And sent them. Across 26 frequencies. Into the dark. Then she leaned back. Closed the console. And waited. Above the colony. The hegemony fleet held position. Routine operations. Standard monitoring. Nothing unusual. No resistance. No mobilization. No response. Exactly as expected. On the 6th day, a sensor operator frowned. "Admiral," she said slowly, "I have a contact." The Admiral didn't react immediately. "Classification?" he asked. "Single vessel," she said. "Outer Rim registry. No fleet markings. Routine. Insignificant." "Track it," he said. She did. The ship moved steadily. Direct course. Toward the colony. No deviation. No hesitation. Hours later, another contact appeared. Different origin. Different registry. Same destination. Then a third. And a fourth. The Admiral turned toward the display. Not alarmed. Not yet. But interested. Because this wasn't standard. The ships kept coming. Not together. Not coordinated. One by one. From different directions. Different systems. Different reasons. All moving toward the same point. No formation. No shared signal. No command structure. Arrival. The Admiral stood at the center of his bridge. Watching. Counting. 8, 12. Each one taking position. Not randomly. Between the fleet. And the colony. Still no weapons active. No threats issued. Presence. By the time the count reached 20, the silence on the bridge had changed. Not confusion. Not fear. Something else. Something unfamiliar. The Admiral spoke quietly. Continue monitoring, he said. But his voice had shifted. Just slightly. Because for the first time, in a very long time, he was looking at something he did not have a framework for. The numbers stopped at 41. Not gradually. Not uncertainly. Simply stopped. As if that had always been the number. As if every ship had known exactly how many were supposed to arrive. Even though none of them had spoken to each other. 41 vessels. 17 different species. No shared command. No unified formation. And yet, they held position. Perfectly. Not in military precision. Not aligned by doctrine. But arranged, in a way that felt intentional. Between the fleet and the colony. On the Hegemony flagship, no one spoke for several seconds. Not because they didn't have anything to say. Because none of it fit. The Admiral studied the display. Every ship identified. Every profile loaded. Freighters. Survey vessels. Modified cargo carriers. Independent traders. Not a fleet. Not a force. And yet, they did not move. Weapon status? The Admiral asked. Armed, the tactical officer said. Standard configurations. No active targeting systems engaged. No threat posture. No escalation. Presence. The Admiral's jaw tightened slightly. This wasn't a military problem. And that was a problem. Open a channel, he said. General broadcast. The signal went out. Unidentified vessels. The Admiral's voice carried across all frequencies. You are operating within a declared hegemony territorial zone without authorization. No response. You have no recognized standing. No treaty protection. No operational authority. So, nothing. I am requesting immediate withdrawal, he finished. Silence. Not empty silence. Occupied silence. 41 ships. Listening. One channel opened. Just one. From the first ship that had arrived. The voice that came through was older. Measured. Admiral, it said. The Admiral recognized the tone immediately. Not the voice. The weight of it. State your purpose, the Admiral replied. A brief pause. Not hesitation. Consideration. We owe a debt. The words landed. Wrong. Too simple. Too incomplete. The Admiral frowned. To whom? He asked. A person. Identify the individual. No. The Admiral's expression hardened slightly. You are obstructing a lawful operation. I know. You are outnumbered. I know that too. Then explain your position. A longer pause this time. We came anyway. The Admiral closed his eyes for half a second. Reopened them. Recentered. This wasn't language he could use. Not in a report. Not in a command structure. Give me something actionable, he said. Treaty claim. Jurisdictional argument. Formal grievance. Silence. The same voice. We have none of those. Then what do you have? The beat. The debt. The Admiral stared at the display. 41 ships. No formation. No structure. No doctrine. And yet, not one of them moved. He switched to full broadcast. All ships. Final notice, he said. You are in violation of Hegemony Directive Authority. Withdraw immediately or be treated as hostile. The bridge held its breath. And then, every channel opened. Not one by one. All at once. Different voices. Different languages. Different tones. Some harsh. Some calm. Some unfamiliar to the translation systems. All aligned. And across all of them, the same meaning. We owe a debt. The translation system struggled. Rendered variations. Obligation unfulfilled. Bond not yet honored. Commitment that persists beyond time. But the meaning didn't change. The sound filled the bridge. Not loud, but complete. Like a single note held by many voices. The Admiral stood very still. Because now, he understood something. Not strategically. Not tactically. But fundamentally. There was no leverage here. No command chain to break. No leader to remove. No signal to disrupt. No structure to collapse. Because this wasn't a structure. It was a decision. Made independently. Repeated across 41 individuals. Who had all arrived at the same conclusion. Without needing to agree with each other. The Admiral exhaled slowly. Find the individual, he said quietly. His intelligence officer was already working. Patterns. Connections. Records. She paused. Sir, she said. He looked at her. We have a match. She brought it up. A name. Fragmented across systems. Incomplete. Unregistered in official networks. But consistent. Recurring. Across multiple incidents. Rencalis. The Admiral stared at it. Then back at the ships. At the colony. 43,000 people. Protected not by force, but by something he could not quantify. And for the first time, he didn't know what to do. The Admiral ran the numbers. For times. Different angles. Different assumptions. Same result. He could win. 200 warships. Against 41 independent vessels. This was not a contest. Not by any doctrine. Not by any model. He could break them. But he couldn't define them. And that was the problem. He stood alone in his command room. The display dimmed. The data minimized. Just him. And the decision. He imagined the outcome. Weapons fire. 41 ships destroyed. 17 species impacted. 17 separate responses. Diplomatic fallout. Economic consequences. And something else. Something harder to measure. A shift. Not in power. In trust. Because these ships had not come as a fleet. Had not come as a threat. They had come because they chose to. You could not threaten that. You could not negotiate it. You could only break it. And once broken, it would not return the same way. He exhaled slowly. Then he stood and returned to the bridge. Prepare withdrawal orders, he said. Silence. His first officer turned. Admiral? We are placing the directive under administrative review, he said. Full withdrawal from the sector. The words were precise. Controlled. But they landed like something impossible. Yes, sir, the officer said. Orders moved. Systems shifted. The fleet began to pull back. On the display, 41 ships remained. Unmoved. Uncelebrating. Unchanged. As if the outcome had never been in doubt. On the surface, the colony didn't react immediately because they didn't understand what they were seeing. 200 warships leaving without firing, without taking anything, without explanation. It took time for realization to spread, for the weight of it to settle. They were still there. In the communication center, Terran stood beside Ren, watching the fleet disappear from orbit. He swallowed. They're leaving, he said. Yes. You did this. Ren didn't answer immediately. She looked at the ships. 41. Different shapes. Different histories. No, she said finally. The pause. I asked. Terran stared at her. That's all. Ren nodded slightly. Because that was the truth. The landing field filled slowly. Ships touching down one by one. Not organized. Not coordinated. Arriving. 17 species. 41 crews. All standing. In the same place. For the same reason. Ren moved through them. Not like a leader. Not like someone in charge. Like someone making sure things were in order. She checked docking placements. Translation relays. Resource distribution. The small things. The things that mattered. And as she moved, she said thank you. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Directly. To each person. By name. With precision. You adjusted your route to get here faster. You burned extra fuel. You delayed your delivery. Each detail. Remembered. Each person. Vorith Kess stood near the edge of the landing zone. Watching her. Waiting. When she approached. He raised one hand slightly. She stopped. The noise around them shifted. Not silence, but attention. You should not thank us, he said. Ren tilted her head slightly. I was going to. I know. He stepped closer. Measured. Steady. That is what you do, he said. You pay attention. The pause. You remember. Ren didn't interrupt. She understood what was happening. You came to me once, he continued. Broken ship. Fair trade. He nodded once. That was commerce. Another pause. You called me years later. The air shifted. You used my name. You found my history. You spoke to me in the way that mattered. His voice lowered slightly. You told me something I did not need. Silence. You told me my granddaughter had done something worth knowing. The landing field stilled. You wanted nothing. Ren's voice was quiet. It was just information. No, he said. From certain. Information has value. It is traded. It is used. The pause. What you gave me. He searched for the word. Not in her language. In his. Then translated it carefully. You gave me the experience of being remembered. That landed. Across the entire field. By someone who had no reason to remember me, he added. Silence. We measure things, he continued. Power. Outcome. He looked around. At some point, we forgot something. Ren said nothing. She knew this part didn't belong to her. You gave it back, he said. The words settled. Not loudly, but completely. You reminded us. What kind of people we could be. No one spoke. Because there was nothing to add. Ren met his gaze. For a long moment. Thank you anyway, she said. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile. But close. Yes, he said. That is acceptable. That night, the colony lights burned brighter. Not because they needed to. Because people were still there to turn them on. Ships rested across the open ground. 41. Each one. A story. A moment. A decision. Made years ago. Burned. Exactly when it mattered. Far away. Reports were written. Analyzed. Filed. They described. Anomalous coordination. Undefined influence structures. Non-aligned multispecies response. They recommended. Further monitoring. Deeper analysis. New frameworks. But they never quite found the word. In the council chamber, an elder listened. Quiet. Patient. They assembled without command, a young analyst said. We need a classification. The elder nodded slowly. Yes, she said. They have one. The room stilled. What is it? The analyst asked. The elder looked at the report. Then beyond it. To something older. Simpler. They call it. A small pause. Friendship. The ships left over the next 3 days. One by one. No ceremony. No declaration. Departure. Because the work was done. Ren stood at the edge of the landing field. Watching them go. Not holding them. Not asking them to stay. Because that was never the point. Sarah joined her. You knew they would come, she said. Ren shook her head slightly. I knew what I had given, she said. The pause. I didn't know what it would become. Sarah looked at the emptying field. 41 ships. Gone. That's the part no one can calculate, she said. Ren nodded. The stars came out. Quite unchanged. And yet, something in the galaxy was different. Not louder. Not stronger. But connected. And somewhere in the outer systems, a ship set a course toward a place no one had mapped yet. Because there was always somewhere else to go. Always someone else to meet. Something worth paying attention to.